everyone. Welcome to a scientific edition of ARG Presents. It's about to get scientific up in here. I'm your good buddy, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man who's so low that he's not even from Ohio. I give you the Brent.
It's true. I'm not from Ohio.
Oh, he admits it. Unbelievable. Now listen.
I have a question, Aaron. Did you enjoy science in school?
No, I did not.
Oh,
in fact,
really?
The only class I ever failed my entire life, brother, that didn't involve me not showing up, of course, is chemistry.
This is high school
Chemistry.
Really?
Yeah,
See, I enjoy science. Science and English was my two favorite subjects.
Yes, I not my favorite. But we're going to get scientific here in just a moment because last week we spun the wheel. We made the deal. But before we get to that deal, that exciting deal with the Brent, we're going to do a little BAM show rewind. You'll recall last week, Brent, we did a show on a little item called the Binatone. Remember the Binatone? The Pong, the Cadillac of Pong machines. You know, we in our haste, in our excitement for the Binatone, we rolled right past some very well done reviews on Discord. I want to get to a couple of these reviews, Brent, if I may, if you can spare a moment of your time, my friend.
Well, I'm okay. Let's go.
First review here we got was from our good pal Mitsuyama, who writes, "The Binatone TV4 was the first video game I ever played. This would have been Christmas of '78, I think, and we went to visit some friends of my parents who had two kids a little older than me that had gotten one for Christmas. It's a cliche now, but I remember being amazed that you could control images being displayed on the telly." I'm right there with you on that.
Absolutely.
However, once the novelty wears off, you are left with variations on Pong, all the non-litigious names like tennis and squash. The downside for me, as an only child, is that all the games except practice required a second player to play against, and therefore I never owned one myself. But this was where my love of video games started, and so I'll always fondly remember this system. Very, very touching one there, the Brent. I like that. Our good friend Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, writes, "Well, it's not the most entertaining system to play, but how can you not bow your head in respect towards the machines that gave birth to the console? This was the world's first experience gaming from home at a remarkably cheap price. For Binatone, it was a complete gamble, bringing a new era to life to the masses. The system was best played competitively in two-player mode, but when you're on your own, practice squash mode was a little dull. I did try two-player mode a few times, holding a controller in each hand, which was a challenge in itself. Only you could pull that off, Paul. However, as I am left-handed, it was never going to be a fair game." I'll give you credit on that. "The warning messages in the manual demonstrated the early worries of console and its dangers to TV sets. And I quote, 'After 2 hours of playing, please switch the game off and return to a random picture for at least 10 minutes before finally switching off the TV set. It will help prolong the life of your TV. Them were happy days.'" Isn't that nice? A sad truth is, if we could have gotten Paul together with Mitsuyama, they could have played with each other. That would have been nice. Lastly,
true.
We've got a review here from Pajako6502, who writes, "It's easy to forget that for gamers, this is where we came from." Ooh, that sort of takes you back a little bit there. "The games are as basic as they come, variants of the same game, and no computer player. However, you can be inventive and have some fun. Try playing two-player games against yourself." There's another person that did that. "Or playing with your non-dominant hand. I still prefer classic original Pong-style game best. But these old Binatone-style consoles are only worth playing at an exhibition. If you're lucky enough to find a working one, it'll get played for a couple hours, then gather dust on your shelf. 5 out of 10 when compared to other similar consoles of the time." Interesting. I do want to mention that it was quite a conversation about the old Binatone last week on the Discord, the Brent, including some people having pictures of it, pictures of the gun, pictures of the manual that came with it, including talking about the price. The price of this thing was incredibly low. It was like, I think it was £10 to pick this thing up, and someone even posted a little blurb that Binatone had put out that stated, "Listen, we know this thing is cheap, but we build quality products. We like to keep the prices down, but don't let the price fool you. This console's all man, which I like that. So we had a lot of fun with the Binatone, and it was a nice setup, the Brent, for what we spun for this week. Because as we move forward,
it really was.
We are going to take a look at BAM, the Ohio Scientific Challenger. Brent, what did you know about this before you foolishly and naively put it on the wheel?
Zero. I'd never heard of it before.
Well,
I thought, wow, this is a little computer, and I think we can emulate
yes.
it. On the wheel it goes.
The tireless research you do before making these wheel pieces is astounding. And you're doing more research right now because we still have no new wheel pieces. So hopefully
it's all part of my cunning
is
plan.
It? Wow. Well done. You're more of the Baldric than the Blackadder, my friend. So this week we are in fact looking at the Ohio Scientific Challenger. We're going to do a little backstory here because this requires a little extra intro here on the Ohio Scientific Challenger, because it was made by a company that no longer exists and really didn't exist all that long as a computer maker.
Yeah, they sold pretty quick.
But it's still an interesting piece of history. We're going to look at this thing. Of course, the Ohio Scientific Challenger came out of an outfit called Ohio Scientific Instruments. And guess what? Out of Ohio, USA. They were founded in 1975. They ran from 1975 to 1981, so they only ran for 6 years, Brent. They were known,
but they didn't go under. They sold.
That's right, and we'll get into that.
And that's very important.
Yeah. So the company was formed by Mike and Charity Cheeky. I like the names. They were alumni from a college in Ohio called Hiram College. All right.
And so was all of their
Correct.
staff.
Yes.
They only hired people from that college alumni.
Good idea. I mean, if you hire all your friends, and especially you can tell if they know what they're doing or not. So these guys started off making a single board, like basically do-it-yourself kit computer, and that ended up being fairly popular. This thing, the earliest computer they made, I think you can start buying these things in like the early 1976. They're $100. There you can see ads for them if you look around, and you can also do a little extra. You can buy a little extra stuff for it to crank it up a little bit. The original board had 8 National Semiconductor 2102 SRAM chips for a total of 1,024 bytes of RAM. It also, if you look at this thing, there's not much to it. It's a bank of LEDs, and it's actually featured here at the beginning of this video. It's a bank of LEDs and switches, but this is the way a lot of these old computers were. There was not a whole lot of stuff to them. These were just kit computers to do various tasks back in the day. So this ended up doing pretty well for these guys, and they were like, the heck with it, let's go to work. And so they came up with a new computer design in '78, and they called it the Model 500, Brent. Now, the Model 500 was a little more advanced.
It was a lot more advanced.
But it wasn't still what I would call proper computer.
Okay, that's fair.
And so they eventually got around to launching the Challenger series. Now, when we're going to get into 3 of the Challengers, these guys released, for only being around for like 6 years, they released a ton of computers and boards. But we're going down a road here with Ohio Scientific that we went down once before with the NASCOM, if you'll recall. These computers would sell as a computer in a case, and it would also sell as just the board. And so you not only did you get the cases that they made, you got all kinds of crazy cases made out of real nice wood, or cases that are just bare board strapped to a 2x4, weird stuff like that. You got all kinds of weird stuff. So
the Challenger cases are magnificent.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
The main cases, oh my gosh, I think they're perfect.
Yeah,
that is a computer. Yeah. That's so good.
So they originally released this thing called the Super Board. Okay, the Super Board was sort of the predecessor to the Challenger series, and basically they were like, we're releasing these boards. Why don't we just wrap them in a computer? And that's what they did. Now the original Challenger, it looks sort of like a box. It's not that good. We'll look at it here in a little bit. Then you get the Challengers 1P and 4P, and these look like proper computers. The keyboard and you know what these things look like, the Brent, is they look a lot like, and I know you wouldn't know what this was. They look a lot like our original Intoxilizer, the Intoxilizer 5000 with the sides like that and the top. You take the sides off, then you can remove the top and have access to the guts of it.
Yes.
It's a very simplistic design, but it's attractive. I'm sure they weigh a ton when they.
Oh, it's perfect. It's the put your monitor on top. I mean, it's got a flat place to put your monitor. It's just functional, beautiful. I love the look of these things. I absolutely love it.
What they tried to do was they tried to play in the same market as Apple was playing. That's what they were after. Their Superboard 2, which was the least expensive computer around at the time, you could get just the board, which came with BASIC on board for $279. That was a super good deal back in the day.
Excellent deal.
Now,
yeah,
they ended up getting a little more pricey as it went. I've got a little price list here, if you can see it there, and their prices were low, and that was sort of their angle, but still they weren't mega low. And I'll give you an example. You believe it or not, you're gonna love this. You could get a Challenger 3, all right, with a hard drive. Okay, they were one of the first companies that was selling computers with hard drives.
Absolutely.
The largest hard drive available at that time was a 74 meg hard drive, megabyte.
That's huge. Now, that's absolutely huge.
How much do you think a computer with a 74 meg hard drive would cost?
$1,000.
$1,000. Wrong. So very wrong. Try $13,000.
Woo! I didn't think that a company of this size could justify producing a computer of that price point.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah. It was a Winchester hard drive that went into their Challenger 3, which was introduced in August of '77.
Oh, you're saying you're saying the hard drive actually came with the system.
That's right. Oh no, trust me, that money was all the hard drive. It wasn't the system.
Yeah. Okay.
So here's the system you're looking at here for that money. It's a 53 kilobyte of static RAM. It had an 8-inch 370K floppy disk in its dual floppy system. It had an optional 4-foot high rack mount cabinet with wheels. That'd be kind of cool. And you got the hard drive. Now, $13,000 is a lot of money. The least expensive version of it, with no rack, no hard drive, nothing except for the computer, was four large. So the rack and the hard drive were costing you about $9,000 back in the day. It was big money, man. So the sad truth of it is when the deal went down, these guys they were popular, but they looked at the field they were playing in, because they had cranked out the Challenger 4P. They even had Challenger 8P. They had all these different computers, but they were looking at having to ramp up to a production scale that they weren't able to do to make themselves a player in the area of microcomputers of the time, because you had Apple out there that were doing their thing, and then you had several other players out there that were doing their thing, including like your Tandys and whatnot. And so these guys they ultimately didn't think they had the jack to do it. They're probably right, to be completely honest with you. You know, they probably just didn't have the jack to play in that ball field. So by the end of March of 1981, they were sold to an outfit called MACOM Incorporated out of Burlington, Massachusetts. They were still a collective. They were still sort of a unit there. They ultimately got sold a bunch of times. And it's funny, if you look at their history, they ended up being around for a long time, sort of, just because they got juggled around. And what finally ended them, they were gone in 81. But what finally ended them was the fact that they didn't have the money to pay a due loan, and they were gone. But they were gone well before. So the company that owned them folded. So they're effectively gone.
Right.
But they, I've heard quotes from the guy that owned the outfit here, Mike Cheeky, and he does mention he wishes they'd held on a little bit longer, because they had such an excellent computer that he thinks they could have maybe played in the field if they'd gotten a little bit of backing. He also mentions he knew a lot of players in the field back in those days, and that he thinks he probably could have gotten the backing if he had tried a little harder. But he just, at the time, hindsight and whatnot, you can't, what are you going to do? But
actually, I did a little bit of research on Mike.
Oh, really?
I couldn't find much about his brother because they were two brothers. Mike had led a very successful life. Unfortunately, he did die in 2017. But during his time on Earth, he was I don't want to say a con man, but he was able to raise funds like nobody else. That ended up being his claim to fame. He would start companies, right? Bring in all this equity and then sell the company. And he had done this several times over. And it wasn't like the companies were crap. They were real legitimate companies, but the man knew how to go out there and sell himself and sell his companies. His last big push before his death was making plant-based fuel. And I don't know a whole lot about it, but apparently the science wasn't really there, but he was really pushing to get this stuff going. You have to remember back, especially the time this was going on, gas prices were, $4.50 here in the States, and which is high, which is very high. And he was trying to look for alternative fuel sources.
Good angle.
Dude's a genius, like legitimate. I think I saw his IQ is somewhere in the 150 range. So he's a legit
There's
genius.
not many of us up that high.
Yeah. But he from the beginning to the end, he was always working on something, coming up with ideas. It's incredible what he was able to do. And really his mark on computers and with the Ohio Scientific, very understated. This little box, although it was obviously not as popular as a Commodore or a VIC-20 or an Apple One, that type of thing, it is very cherished in its community for being a very comparable machine. And the thing was expandable out the wazoo. Yeah. If you look at the back of one of these Challenger 4s, it's got ports, tons of ports. Yeah. Cards, you put in new cards, take out cards. It could handle floppies, cassettes, upgradable RAM. The thing was really more of what we see a computer today. I mean, sure, you can expand a Commodore, you can expand a VIC-20 and all that stuff, but this little box was designed to do this sort of stuff. They even had the foresight, Aaron, to allow room for a second power supply inside the case.
Yeah, big cases.
So you could run this thing on 2 power supplies. Now, you probably didn't want to without extra cooling because the thing would get hot enough to use as a hot plate, but it could be done. Yeah. So the more I read and the more I found out about these people, it's one of the oldest computers I can think of, and I go, you know what? This is sort of what's happening in modern computers. There are plenty of modern computers that will have a power supply just to run a completely jacked up video card, or sound cards and different inputs and outputs all into a modern computer. That's what they were doing back in the day, really before anyone else was kind of doing it.
Well said, man. We decided there are so many of these Ohio Scientific computers. We're going to focus on 2 mainly, but I have a little write-up here on the first 3 challenges because I think it's kind of interesting. The Challenger I mentioned came out in 77. This thing debuted at a price somewhere between $439 and $25.99. Again, this is a full computer, not just a kit. Brent mentioned the expansion on these things. They had many different expansion options: serial, parallel, tape, floppy drives, AD converters. You could get memory expansions for them, graphics cards, whole 9 yards.
Sound.
Yeah, you could add sound.
They even had sound cards.
Some came with sound right out of the box.
Yeah.
This CPU in this thing was a 6502A or a 6800, depending on the model, and you could get up to 192 kilobytes. Not too bad on the original one.
Incredible.
Yeah, it was a pretty nice little unit. Then we also are going to look at the Challenger 1P. All right, the 1P had a little bit of extra stuff on here. It had an optional floppy disk controller. It had this thing debuted at a reasonable price, about $350. Heck of a bargain, the Brent. This one was, of course, these early ones are monochrome. This one had a tape recorder jack in it. This had composite video, Brent, so you could hook it to a composite monitor. That's nice.
Yep.
And this thing had Microsoft Basic built in. Right, again, this is 79, a full stroke 53 key keyboard, 6502 processor running at 1 megahertz. You know, this sounds more like a modern machine of the era. And then
you know what else these had?
What's
Aaron,
that?
That I bet you're not going to mention. That's why I want to throw it in real quick before we move on. There were add-ons to make your keyboard clicky.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Like official add-ons.
I'm okay.
It was crazy.
I'm okay with that. And then lastly, we looked at the Challenger 4P. Now get this, Brent. This blew me away. When the Challenger 4P was launched, it was twice as fast as an Apple II or Commodore PET, and 3 times as fast as the RS-80. Put that in your pipe and smoke it, brother. That was straight out of Ohio. All right. This thing was around in 81, or excuse me, this came out in 79, and then of course this was one of the last ones they did before it went bye-bye. It's funny, I was looking on a couple websites. They had some people that own these things. They mentioned that one of the major flaws in the design of the CP4 is that they put a reset key directly beside the enter key. Whoops.
Yeah.
Wouldn't do that.
Not a good move.
Listen to this thing, though. So these things sold for around $700, okay, the basic version. What'd you get for your money here? 8K ROM. You got basic in there. You got RAM, expandable to 32K of static RAM, audio interface. You could expand the total RAM up to 48K. It had a 5-inch floppy disk, a real-time clock, sound, the whole 9 yards. It did color. It did a ton of stuff. This thing was awesome. And there's an 8P. Now, we didn't look at the 8P, but that was really right as they were leaving, so the 8P didn't have much of a value to it. So, clearly, when you're cranking it up and going past Apple and Tandy, you've got something. And these guys had something.
And
they
still
were legitimate.
keeping the price reasonable.
Yeah. So, with all that said, sure, it's an interesting computer, but can it play the games? It was, a little bit. So this week we sort of did gaming by committee on this one. And Brent, thankfully, found some games we could try out, Brent. I'm going to let you...
And to be fair, we did play games on the Challenger 1P. Yeah. So this was the very first of the Challenger line. All monochrome, no sound. But you got to start somewhere. Yeah. I think this is really a piece we could revisit, play some of the more modern stuff.
Did you look at any of the games like the 4P and beyond? They were okay.
I did.
They didn't look that bad.
Yeah.
So here we go.
I mean, I didn't play any, I should say.
So Brent, lead us off here. What are we looking at first?
Okay, here's the very first thing you have to know about these computers.
Go ahead.
When you boot them up, they boot to a garbage screen.
Yes.
Okay? It's weird. Not what I think would be a good idea. But you boot to a garbage screen, so you have to hit break.
I think the Apple was like that back in the day. You had to hit like reset or something at the very right when it booted up, as I recall.
And that brings you up to a choice, and you can choose some different ways to start the system. C cold boots it, so it resets it, and now you're ready to go. It asks you how much RAM do you want to use, and it asks you what your screen width, how wide you want how many characters you want your width of your screen.
Right.
If you just hit enter twice, it does the maximum for all of it. You're good to go. Now's where you load up your programs. And these can load off of, you can type this stuff in because it does have basic. You can load it off a cassette. You can load it off floppy. And it loads in a way I've never seen before. It doesn't hide what it's loading. It actually types it out as it loads, right? So it's kind of interesting, although it is slow. Thankfully, through emulation, These usually run at about 1 megahertz, just a little itty bit below it. Some of them ran just a little above it, but 1 megahertz is about where the average is. Through emulation, you can jack it up to run at 8, and then the programs just fly in. So the text is just flying through the screen. So the first game we took a look at is Star Wars. And Star Wars has you controlling the crosshairs of your magnificent fighting machine, and you see your target off into the distance. It's flying around shooting lasers at you, and you've got to line up your crosshairs onto the bad guy and blow him away. The default keys for this which is what I use because I don't think there's a way to change it. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 for up, down, left, right. 5 stops your crosshairs, and 6 fires. Yes. It is a complicated control scheme.
Indeed.
It leaves much to be desired. And because of that, even after much effort, I was unable to actually shoot down a ship. No.
I couldn't either. Thank God. I felt like a doofus.
Yeah. The control for this, something else that needs to be mentioned real quick, programming wise, this does not have a graphics mode. This is all done with pokes for the programming inclined, and it's all based on the character set, which is of course you've got your letters and numbers, but you only have like 28 additional symbols, something like that. It's a very small set to pull from. This is by far the most graphical game we're going to look at today.
Yes, this is the Cadillac. Britt, the graphics on your ship are so good. Unfortunately, you can't see it because you're in it, but I hear they're incredible.
Yeah, well, no, I mean it makes up for it with the story part. It says, "Hey, you're in the cockpit. You are controlling the turret."
Yeah.
So all you see is your turret.
It's
sights.
like in Star Wars where Luke's in the Millennium Falcon's gun room. It's kind of like
That's right. Yeah,
not that realistic, but it's not bad. I mean, we couldn't even succeed once, but that's great.
To start the game, it has you put in a random number, and I believe that randomizes where the enemy ship starts. It allows you to put in pretty much any number that you want. I mean, it's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. I put in 666 at one point, and it was just like, yeah, fire it up. All right, here you go. The controls are horrible.
Yeah.
The motion for the controls is horrible. The ship is only one character in size, and your shot is only one character in size, which means you have to get absolutely dead on to make it work. That is unfortunate. It would have been much better if the explosion was, say, 9, a square of 9. That would have made it at least reasonable. When you shoot, it runs through a bunch of characters that sort of simulates a laser blast where you're shooting, but, it's doing what it can. The worst part about it is, though, not only are the controls not intuitive because your 3 key is right and your 4 key is left, which is backwards to what you would even comprehend them to be. It's just kind of shoddy to move around the screen.
Yeah. But I mean,
that said,
it's not bad.
I did play this for a stupid amount of time.
You were trying to get that ship, weren't you?
I really, really wanted to shoot down at least one guy, and I never pulled it off.
I know, man. I'm the same way. I couldn't get it either. Still, I thought it was kind of neat. This reminds me of those old, character, Petsky or whatever games where they went out and tried to do a game on something that was built to do God knows what. Surely not to play games. But I do like the ship looks okay, and the laser it shoots is kind of neat. It shoots diagonal sometimes. Pretty cool.
The enemy ship can shoot in 8 directions, and while it does sort of shoot at your crosshairs, it doesn't seem that shooting the crosshairs is what actually blows you up. So I'm not exactly sure how it calculates the bad guys firing, Because it doesn't look like you can dodge. I've had it kill me when it didn't shoot anywhere close to my targeting. Seems a little random. I don't know if it gives you X amount of time to shoot the ship. And it says it does keep a running score. So if you were able to shoot down a ship, it brings up another ship. But of course, I never got that far in my dozens of minutes of trying.
Yeah. Hey, let me ask you, because I know you got on YouTube and looked around for a lot of. There's not a ton of games from the original couple challengers, are there? I mean, videos of them. I didn't come across a whole lot.
No, and it's kind of strange because, I mean, realistically, this should be able to run anything that is in basic. So you would think there would be more stuff out there. Maybe even if it wasn't designed specifically for the Challenger. So I don't know.
I'm guessing that just a lot of people don't have these,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
And there you go with that.
Like I said before, the player, the ownership of these are very dedicated. There's a lot of information out there on the Challenger series, especially. Yeah. Those definitely seem to be the most popular, but it's still a very, very small segment of the population.
Now let's talk about this next game that you found for us, Brent. This is your straight up old school Othello. I don't know how to play Othello, so how did I mean I screwed around with it, but what did you think of this thing as a this is a 2-player Othello game, basically?
This is a 2-player Othello game. You have your standard grid. It's an 8x8 grid. Letters up one side of it, numbers across the bottom, and each player puts in their coordinates of where they want to place their piece. And then it uses X's and O's. So one player's X, one player's O. And as you put these in, it automatically flips all the correct pieces. In Othello, you want to have the most pieces of your type on the board at the end. That's pretty much it. When you put something on one side of it, it flips everything in between that connects to your color, or well, normally it's black and white, but this would be X and O. Yeah. This, of course, I couldn't play it competitively. Aaron doesn't know how, and I didn't have anyone else here. But it plays perfectly fine. This is exactly the type of game that excels on this. It's fast. If you put in wrong coordinates, it doesn't go through all this, oh, you're an idiot, you can't do that kind of spiel. Yeah. It just clears it off. It thinks, well, you probably typed this in wrong, and lets you type it in again.
It assumes that if you're using the Ohio Scientific Challenger, you're not an idiot. You just made a typo. This is my computer would not make this assumption. It'd be like, you idiot, wrong.
Well, error screens are so overrated for this kind of thing. I mean, honestly, this is completely legitimate. It doesn't need to tell you it's wrong. It just, nothing. It just lets you type it in again. I played a full game by myself, which is kind of stupid because it's Othello.
How'd you do?
And then I played a partial other game trying to break it. I was trying to do complicated diagonals or having it flip, 7, 8, 9 pieces at a time to see if it would slow down or crash or anything like that. It handled it all like a champ. So it was, if you're going to sit down with a buddy and play this, perfectly legit way of doing it.
Well, if you're going to sit down with a buddy and play this, you don't like your friend that much.
Oh, no.
Hey, I got an idea.
This is a game.
Let's play
as
some
old
Ohio
as time.
Scientific Challenger Othello. Let's get in there. You know what I think about? Just
in the 70s, Aaron, not today.
If you'll indulge me for a minute. What I like about stuff like, here we are. It's 2021 as we record this to Brent. And we're looking at an Othello game that some guy at Byte Magazine or something probably put in the back as an afterthought for a machine that debuted back in 77. Can you imagine that some guy that wrote Othello for the Challenger would think that a couple dipsticks would be talking about his Othello game in 2021? It's mind-boggling. The fact that we can even play these games is ludicrous. And
This is what this
I
show
know,
is all about,
it's
baby.
it's crazy to think about. I mean, this thing's from '77, for God's sakes. Look at the Challenger up there. It's a box. Our computer's a box.
My computer's a box.
Anyway, there's not
Yeah.
not much to be said about Othello, is there, Brent? I mean, it's Othello, but
Oh yeah,
it looks
is.
it's playable. You know, if you know how to play. I never got into Othello myself, but you know, people play it. So let's talk about this third game, Brent. Not as much footage for this last game. What do we got here?
The last game we made footage for was Hang Woman, because you're always hanging men, but you're never hanging women. Darn it! And we're gonna justify that today.
They were ahead of the game in the '70s with this game, because this is definitely not a sexist game. It's equal. Anyone can be hung, and by God, it's
that's right.
This time around, we're hanging a woman. This is standard fare as well, isn't it?
This is pretty much your standard fare, with the exception of the way they spice this up is, unlike Othello, where you want to just get in there and do your thing, right? This game, it actually kind of makes it fun. It has some humor to it. Seriously.
I know. I just don't.
There are times when you guess a letter and it's like, nope, it's not in there. And it pauses for a second and goes, oh, okay, maybe it is. And it'll pop your letter in there. So it takes a little bit of the standard game, adds a little bit of humor to it. The hanging woman is well drawn for the character set that they have. I believe if we watch the entire video, I do eventually get her completely hung out to dry there.
Because you're dumb.
You get no. Unfortunately, it looks like, I played it several times. It looks like the first word is always the same, but words after that are different.
I was wondering about that myself, because I watched your video after playing it. I'm like, huh, that's the same thing I got.
Yeah. The first word's the same. All the other words afterwards seem different. I don't know how many words there are. I think I played 6 rounds in total, with 1 restart, which means I had going twice, which means I saw 5 words in total. I don't know how big the dictionary is on it. Yeah, Aaron, if you could speed up that footage just a little bit.
Yeah, we'll get there.
To get her to the complete position, I want to point out one other thing.
One ugly bride. That they got.
I like that she has a flat top haircut.
Yeah.
I kind of dig that.
Well, I mean, maybe the woman is hanging a dude, but it does say she's got this and she's got that. So.
Yeah, no. You're definitely hanging a woman. Good for them. Although it is kind of strange. Of course, you build her head, her arms, and her hands and her legs, and then right before she's completely hung out to dry, you put clothes on her, which I don't know what that implies otherwise. But
yeah, I noticed that. This, is it wrong that I played this 10 times more than I played the other ones? I don't know. I don't know what this. Listen, I've never ran into a Hangman game I didn't like, so that's another one. And I did the same thing you did. I screwed around and just to see what would happen, and it was.
Oh yeah, because it has different comments depending on what you put in. I think there's probably 10 unique phrases that it says throughout the thing. But when you hang her, if you're watching the video footage at home, you'll see it here in just a moment. She actually kicks her legs back and forth as she hangs in agony, and I don't think the program ever ends. So you just kind of you just kind of have to watch her hang there forever.
This is the first game ever that should have gotten a mature rating right here. You're hanging a woman, and then you watch her swing as after she's dead. But these games, of course, are all. Not only are they basic, they were in basic, so they're basic games.
Yes.
But I mean, you got to think it's not like anybody was dealing games for the Ohio Scientific Challenger in '77. So you're going to get some of these kind of older type basic games. But it was interesting. Overall, I found this whole system and the whole company to be kind of an interesting dive, the Brent. I'll be honest with you.
One other program I do want to mention, Aaron, just real quick. I also played a poker program, and the poker program was remarkable for what it was. The cards all were suited properly. It was snappy. I played, I don't know, probably 50 hands. The computer player, because you play against one other person, seems to fold and raise their bets based off the actual power of their hand and based off of kind of how you're betting. So the AI for it, now it could all be just a coincidence, but the AI for it seemed really advanced for a poker game back in the 70s. I really enjoyed playing it. I really enjoyed playing all the games that I played. Star Wars was definitely the worst, just because it was so hard to control.
It was also the most ambitious, to be fair.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'll give it credit.
Later into the Challenger's lifespan, when they did get color, when they did get sound, there were, I don't want to say proper games, because these were proper games, but there were more what you would think to find on a computer. Of course, it was also pushed into the 80s. So, but you know what? I personally, you can play all these games online in an emulator
easily.
Check them out. Yeah, it's fun to go back. I always like shows, Aaron, when we go way back, because I would have been 1 at the time the Challenger 1P was released, so I couldn't experience these things during that time frame. I love going back and looking at this stuff. Now, you're not going to spend hours and hours, but give it a half an hour. Play, remember how things used to be. It's all good. It's all good. I'll really enjoy it.
It puts things in perspective a little bit too, as though, what you're playing now. I'll tell you, like I said, this reminds me a lot of the NASCOM episode we did.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is, we just got comments on that yesterday about people that, it's funny, people, if you go and read the comments under that video, there were people that had the NASCOM and they found it and they talk about their experience with it and what their version looked like. And the same thing with the Binatone episode. We've gotten some people talked about the different colors they had, whatnot, and how much fun they were. So it's neat. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed this for myself. And heck, I can see a future episode where we come back to and play the more advanced color version.
Absolutely. Go next time we get this on the wheel, when it pops up in a retro rewind, if it comes up, Challenger 4 all the way.
And I will say, I'm going to do something I rarely do. The person that selected this, now granted, it was a selection made by a drunken moron in the middle of the night, but it was you, the Brent, and you actually did a good job. Let's see. Now we'll see the next round of wheel pieces if you come up with another winner. Speaking of it, let's go to it, Brent. You know what it's time for. It's the wheel, brother. Oh. All right, now. This week, now listen, for you folks in chat, we're going to need you guys to pay close attention because it's double chat action this week. We've got 2 chat choice. Whenever we run out of pieces, that means the chat gets in on the action. We've got chat choice and chat subject choice on here, the Brent. And we've also added, the Game Gears, our retro rewind piece. Are you ready, the Brent?
Absolutely. Fire it up.
Any particular ones you'd like to see on here, the Brent?
I want to see the chat.
All right. Oh, you're gonna. Oh man, we always get screwed by the chat. So here we go.
That's true.
You didn't like my wheel dance last week, and the winner is almost got the chat. Let's see what we got here, the Brent. We've got different ports, same system, the Brent. Different ports, same system. What do you think about that?
Who was that piece suggested by?
Our own Pajako 6502. Different ports.
Excellent.
So what we're saying is these are
Brock
different.
Nailed it. Brock in chat said that's what we're gonna spin, and that's
You're
exactly what came
Brock,
up.
Are you nuts? He did say it. I'll be darned. How did he know? I'm serious. This isn't a fix. Listen, this is an interesting piece to Brent because it will be games that were done twice on the same system. So effectively, we're gonna be looking at 2 games each next week. More or less, the same game.
Yeah.
So that's different ports, same system. Now that's going to require a little bit of research. I will tell you that the C64 has this happen a bunch of times. I also will say this: are we going to accept clones as for this as well? So, like for example, The Coco has buzzard bait, and they also have Pegasus, for example. Could you do something like that?
No.
They have to.
That's not.
They have to be official releases. Okay, that's what.
Yes.
Sort of make sure that we had our ducks in a row on that one. So that will be different ports, same system. Listen, I want to discuss a quick bit of news before we take this thing to the house, Brent. I know you've got something to say as well. This coming Saturday, this is September 18th, 2021. It's all going to go down, Brent, at the International Computer Club. We're going to have another meeting of the ICC. It will take place again next Saturday, September 18th, 2021, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We got a full lineup of presenters here. They're ready to show their wares, to talk about their expertise, to show off their awesomeness. It'll be a good time. We're going to run this thing on the Discord this time around. So if you want to actually be a part of the festivities and show up there in the video, you can get in Discord. We'll have a room set up for you. And if you want to watch this, you can get on Twitch. It'll be on our Twitch channel. Again, we'll be kicking it off at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Saturday, the 18th. Brent, what do you got?
New supporter video this week. Hope everyone enjoys it. If you want to be in the supporter video, have your name called out, please head over to ARG Presents on Patreon. That'd be patreon.com/ARG Presents. We love our supporters. We are coming up, Aaron, just 1 month away, and we will have been running our Patreon officially for 1 year.
Oh, very good.
So our Patreon 1 year anniversary is right around the corner.
Who'd thunk it?
Of course, we have some supporters still from Anchor.fm. We love them too. It's all a big ARG family.
Yeah. Listen, you can just send the check. We love you. Checks in the mail. We do appreciate you guys for helping us out. We had a good.
My lovely new mic boom, which you cannot see because it's cropped out by the background, was totally funded from listeners just like you.
Plus the exotic location you're at right there in that alley.
Do you know where my background is,
I think
Aaron?
you're at the world headquarters for the Challenger there, the Ohio Scientific Challenger.
That is correct. Yeah. That is correct. It is a modern day photo, but I am on the street where the OSI was constructed and conceived.
It almost brings a tear to a glass eye, the Brent. Let's take this thing to the house. We'll see you guys next week for different ports, same system. Until then, get out to Ohio and get scientific today.
Don't do that.
Yeah, you're right. Don't go there.
Thanks for joining us today. We really hope you enjoyed the show. We want to say a special thank you to Duncan Styles for our vector style graphic and Bart Pitt for our amazing music. We also want to say a super special thank you to our supporters. Rolo, Olive Hub, Terry Howard, Gary Heather, John Schaller, The Slow Norris, Frodo and L, Chris Foles, Mitsuyama, Jason Warnes, Rob Black O'Hara, Andy Craig, Andy Jones, Kevin Bean, Jocko 6502, Anthony Jarvis, Steve Rasmussen, Bernhard Lucas, Dave Velociraptor, Graham W. Vetke, Roshi, Mr. B, David Terrence, Super Tech Boy, Oram, Sundown, Texas Foosballer, Airshot, Retroalgy, John Deckman, Jerry Dennington, and Z9K9. If you'd like to become a supporter for as little as $1 a month, you can do so at patreon.com/ARG Presents. Supporters get access to our Discord channel and their name called out in the credits. Don't want to explain another credit card bill? That's okay too. You can support us by leaving us a positive review on Spotify or Apple iTunes. Have an idea for a wheel piece? Email us at argpresents@mail.com. We film live every Sunday on Twitch, Sunday, 10 a.m. Hope to see you there.